Hello, everybody. Knocking on the door. Let's get started with the session. So I'm here with OpenFaaS end user and contributor Patricio. He's flown in all the way from Paraguay just to speak to you today. And my name's Ellis, and I'm the creator of OpenFaaS and work at VMware. So we want to take you on a bit of a journey today. And what I've done here is I've put up a globe, and right up in that corner is Washington State, which is where we are right now. Thousands of miles, 8 hours, 9 hours across here is the United Kingdom, where I live, and Patricio from South America here. Why have I put this up on the screen? Well, we're thousands of miles apart, but we have exactly the same technical problems. And this community of Kubernetes and cloud-native components is able to help us solve these problems. And we actually find that our community has got closer by resolving these issues and focusing on end users. The first contact I had with Patricio was actually this tweet where he said, I've just launched an OpenFaaS function into production. And as per normal, I thought, oh, that's great, until I found out that he was actually at a bank in Paraguay, and he was running serverless functions in production using OpenFaaS. And so that's where our relationship started. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, before hi to everyone, I'm Patricio. At that time we had our function working. They were 3 functions. Our prototype were working for about a week without a problem, and it worked for us. It was a better scenario than we have with that same procedure with our previous infrastructure.
Now we've got a couple of things up here. On the right-hand side is Grafana, showing all of your OpenFaaS functions and how they're doing. And what's the graph on the left-hand side?
This is a C advisor. We were monitoring our containers. That was a Docker Swarm at that time. And we had a very good, very better control and visibility of our resources.
Great. So this is what our agenda is going to look like. We're going to start off by talking about Vision Bank Paraguay, just to set the scene for you. We're then going to look at what the journey's been like so far that was the catalyst of that tweet until where we are now. We'll look into 101 of OpenFaaS, how you guys can make use of this and take the knowledge back to your workplace, how it compares to other serverless frameworks that are available. And then we'll look at some of the lessons that were learned and what we're going to do in the future as we look forward. You see at the bottom of the slide our Twitter handles. Feel free to take photos and post them. Our contact details will be there at the end as well. You have a chance to ask questions. Okay. So tell us a bit about Paraguay.
Well, I am from Paraguay. This is a country in South America. We are an island surrounded by Rome, we like to say. I want to tell you two remarkable facts we have, just as a reference. The first one is we have 3 hydroelectric dams. 100% of the electricity we use on our country comes from those dams. One of them is the second biggest dam in the world. Well, the other interesting fact is that we export meat and soya beans. If probably the soya late you like to drink, the beans come from my country. And if you ever flown with Qatar Airlines, probably you tasted our meat. We are about 7 million people, and 1/3 of that people are customers of the financial system.
Yeah, so let's hear a bit more about Vision Bank. I know you have this motto, tus metas nos inspiran. Yeah. What does that mean?
That means that your goals inspires us. As our bank, as I told, is ranked, well, our bank is ranked at the top 10 amongst the top 10 of the banks in the country. As I told, 1/3 of the population have bank accounts, and 400,000 of those customers are customers of our bank. Our bank focuses on small and medium-sized business. That is why your goals inspires us. It's most enterprise statement. Well, but that is changing a little because our government is doing a campaign to make most of the individuals of the population become customers of the financial system. Well, that increasing amount of customers makes that millions, our system receive millions of requests per day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great to know. And so I hope this gives you a little bit of a flavor of Paraguay and Vision Bank, and now we're going to start to look at the journey. Now this journey started off in the enterprise. We heard about this enterprise mission using JBoss from Red Hat. And JBoss is a framework that's related to ESB Fuse that allows you to build microservices. It doesn't at least use Docker in the way that it was being consumed at Vision Bank. This was the first attempt at probably decomposing the system.
Decomposing system.
From there on, Patricio, as we saw, adopted Docker with Swarm and OpenFaaS. That was on the tweet. A little bit later on, though, in the journey, you've moved to Kubernetes, and that's why we're here at KubeCon to tell you how Kubernetes, OpenFaaS, and related technologies can build a complete solution that solves problems. Okay.
That's good.
So tell us what it was like with JBoss.
Well, we started using JBoss and before other application servers, but lately we are using JBoss. We using it because he has a very good enterprise support. We benefit from the composition, but lately we found also that there are some drawbacks. It is, as we told, it's a little brittle at scale. It is unstable on scale. It's very, very resource hungry. So it is very hard to scale. We had to babysit it a lot, and we had to have people all the time watching it and taking care of it. Even we had to have people on call out of the labor hours. Since from the developer's point of view, it is a complex architecture. To carry on a single project, we had to gather a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, and hope and wait that they can agree the concerns, responsibilities, and requirements of the project. And that takes a very long time, and it is prone to fail.
Well, that doesn't sound very cloud native to me. I don't know about you. So let's look at what we were able to do to help out. So the first step in this journey was to start looking at functions. And with that, you actually got a lot of the Docker ecosystem. So self-healing, declarative infrastructure. Now, when we look at this architecture of OpenFaaS, we have an API gateway component. We've got a watchdog that is similar to what Kelsey showed you in the keynote this morning. Can make any function serverless, any binary. And then Prometheus metrics that allow us to monitor the system. NAT streaming to do asynchronous processing on a very lightweight level at a very low cost. And then we launched with Swarm, but now we have native Kubernetes support. That just runs on Docker images, and it's a key differentiator between other platforms. What's the most important part of this to you, and what would you say?
Definitely this is the NAT streaming, because most of the requests we receive, they had to be handled asynchronously. So the NAT is the most useful part of this stack we are using.
You know, that wasn't what I was expecting when I spoke to Patricio, and actually just meeting here today has really opened my eyes to how you're using this. So OpenFaaS has a cloud-native architecture. These are all things that you should be familiar with. You've probably seen one of these before too. Tell us a bit about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, this is the Grafana chart, which monitors our host. This was taken when we have been 25 and 4 weeks. And the most important is that this, a part of giving us the visibility, we have alerts. We had Grafana alerts to check if our resources are in acceptable level.
Now that's come from cAdvisor, but actually you need a bit more than just RAM and CPU, and that's why OpenFaaS has custom metrics that are collected at that gateway component that allow us to do this auto-scaling to whatever need you have, and even to 0 and back again. And so we have a demo here where this was taken during DockerCon. We had a huge calling on this function. There was replica scaling up and up and up, and then when that request load had passed, it scaled back down to 0 again. And so you're able to track these metrics. And if you remember back to that tweet Patricio put out, it was a Grafana dashboard. So it's very important to be able to monitor this. Tell us just very briefly about your serverless journey with Swarm and OpenFaaS.
Yeah, well, we adopted OpenFaaS, and once we have defined the requirements and the requirement for a project, and we can start doing functions, and it takes us about a few hours and 2 or 3 days a week at maximum to have our functions working, to have a function working. Do the functions our functions are very resource efficient, so we are not wasting resources. And as the platform gives us control, auto-healing, auto-scaling up and down, we have to do less babysitting with our deployments. This is very good.
There's some drawbacks to this?
Yeah. When we were using Swarm, we found that the ecosystem is very, very, very limited, and the industry were pushing us to another direction, most to Kubernetes,
right?
And so we had to adopt that.
Thanks. So you were using Swarm, it was serving your purposes, but actually needed a bigger ecosystem. So what did you get from Kubernetes?
Yeah, what we found with Kubernetes is that it was easy to install. We just installed it without a problem. Then we installed OpenFaaS over it, and we start using it as we were used to do it. So it was not a big deal to move from to Kubernetes and OpenFaaS open up. We have now more control and visibility with that. And now, when we had successfully running our function with OpenFaaS and Kubernetes, we need to find a tool to have more control, to have visibility, and to allow auditors and testers and that kind of people to manage our cluster. So after a couple of candidates, we found Rancher. We found it easy to install. We found it very, very easy to use. It has a pretty good UI, but most important, it integrates very good with our existing infrastructure manager, that is VMware, vSphere, and so we keep using it, and we are still using it. But there are a few drawbacks. One of them is that we now had to learn to use Kubernetes. Some kinds that were trivial with Swarm, now we had to do with more lines or more steps, but it's just kind of get used to it. And other drawback we found we didn't have with Swarm is that we now had to use service discovery. And it is easy to use with our functions or the projects that are deployed on Kubernetes, but we had to integrate all that with our infrastructure. So we are now embarked to implement and learn how to use service discovery.
So we'll show you the architecture, the solution architecture that Patricio's implemented, and it uses your existing system and builds upon that. So how could you sum up, just very shortly, your current work at the bank with OpenFaaS?
Yeah, we are trying to lead the technology innovation in Latin America. We are trying to do that. We are contributing to open source, maybe not with much code, but doing use case and giving feedback to the community. And that's very important, taking into account that we are a very restrictive environment to run. We are a bank. Yeah, and we adopted Kubernetes. We are using it. We are an example that we can use, that Kubernetes can be used in banks. And we are starting new projects using OpenFaaS. And I don't want to forget that we are using OpenFaaS.
Great. Thank you, Patricio. Yeah, nobody forget that. So a lot of the work that Patricio has done and a lot of the value that he's drawn from is from this landscape. Now, this is the serverless landscape. You're all very familiar with the cloud native one. And on the left-hand side of the screen, I believe it's the left, we've got hosted platforms that do suit a lot of people's needs. They're completely locked down. You have very little control, but they're very easy to use. On the right-hand side, in this box, you have installable serverless platforms. Now, these are completely open source, and to a larger extent, you're in control. You can get under the bonnet, and you can make adjustments as you need, tune them into your team. Now, for Patricio, he needed something that he could run on premise. You may have multi-cloud, you may have hybrid, but they have private cloud only. So they needed something from this landscape, and they picked OpenFaaS. But I'd like to highlight Dispatch from VMware, another internal effort, Project Riff, Knative, we've heard a little bit about that at the conference, and then there's some other big projects there too. Now these all have different pros and cons, and I thought we'd just walk through a few of them, give you a bit of context. So OpenFaaS and Kubeless are probably a couple of the most mature here. They go back 2 years. They come from the community, OpenFaaS. Kubeless produced Bitnami, and Google recently released install controls, Knative. Knative is more of a platform builder's tool than a serverless project that you can consume as a user. Right? OpenFaaS and Kubeless have very nice user interfaces. We spend a lot of time on those. They're both very stable. Knative is probably around 0.2, if I'm correct, and is very, very new. It was released 3 months ago by Google in the summer, whereas we have many more customers in production. OpenFaaS and Knative can both run a Docker image, which means any binary that you have can actually run as a function. Kubeless limits you to just the runtimes that they've picked. And then if you look at this column, it says YAML. So OpenFaaS has a stack YAML file, which is a really minified, simplified surface area designed for developers. But we also have a CRD, if that's what you care about. And the other projects do too. Now, probably the most lightweight serverless project in the landscape. Kubeless a little less, and then Knative, I think when you embrace something like that, you're taking on a lot of ambient cost, but for certain reasons. Dipping in a bit more to that, we have basically infinite code limits for both of these projects, and things like Kubeless that mirror something like Lambda have a 1 megabyte limit for your function because they use a config map in Kubernetes. Okay. And then these two projects will scale to 0 and then back again. There's a lot of the other projects in the landscape that hasn't been a priority for them. Why am I showing you this? Because I want you to know that one size does not fit all, and it's not whoever can shout the loudest. I think you need to weigh this up and figure out what suits you and your team, which is what Patricio has done. Okay. So OpenFaaS started in November 2016 as a Docker captain and as a container geek. I was trying to find out, could I take that experience I had with Lambda and improve it and actually run it on my own containers? And that's something that I did. And in this picture, you see me at DockerCon just around a year ago, presenting it to 5,000 people. And from there, it's just gone from strength to strength. I have a full-time team at VMware now, where the project remains independent, but I have the resources I need to develop this with the community and work with customers like Patricio. We've got people that have got this in production. Over the last 2 years, we've built up that knowledge, looking at how do we solve these problems for you guys. And then BOSI Awards. So InfoWorld just awarded us a second BOSI Award for Best Cloud Computing Software, which we're really proud of. And we're driven by values. So rather than solving a technical problem at that level, we're trying to be driven by some driving values. One of those is being community-centric. Here you have 160 contributors that have all made their own impact to the project. 12 months ago, though, this was around 40 to 60 people. So we've had almost a 4x growth in people contributing into the project. It's a very healthy, diverse project. When you have this many people, you need some kind of structure, some way of getting them engaged. And so we held regular Zoom calls where people can come and voice their opinions, ask questions, and get involved and see what we're building and be part of something bigger. And we also have core contributors across the top line and the full-time staff at VMware. So community and organic, independent community is something that's really important for us. Another value is being easy to use or putting developers first. Now, the name of the project, the tagline, is Serverless Functions Made Simple, because that is our focus. And when you come from the cloud, where you're typing text into an editor and hitting save, we've got quite a high bar to get to, right? And so that's something that we knew we had to focus on from early on. You can actually run any code. I liked that Kelsey used that Fortran example, because I showed about a year ago running COBOL in the same way. Particle physicist Lucas Hearn, who works at CERN, came up to me and he said, we love OpenFaaS because we can run our Fortran code in your containers. Again, something that I think we're seeing more and more validated. So any kind of binary, any programming language, you can take that to any cloud because of Kubernetes and the other support we have. And then just because it's open source doesn't mean that it's set to a certain limit. Kubernetes, again, allows us to burst out and have infinite scale. So the key differentiator here between a cloud function is that you get to decide what the limits are, how long it can run at maximum, how much code you want, and all the other parameters. Okay. So these are the programming languages that we bundle as templates. Are there any of these that you make use of at the bank?
Yeah, we use Java, Node.js. We are using PHP and starting to use Python. And we are taking a look at Go for adopting it.
And probably a number of you have your languages here as well. But the good news is, if you don't, somebody's probably already created a template in the community, and you can make use of that. If not, it's just a Docker file and an entry point. Very easy to use. In fact, I want to show you a demo of this. This is all you have to look at, is your handler and some way of saying what modules you want for a function. This is Python, and it goes off to a website, pulls the resource, and then tells you what the status code is. Is it not found, 200 OK? That's all that you see as a developer, and then we hide from you a very well-crafted, well-maintained Docker file and entry point that's got best practices applied to it. So running in a non-root user, in a very tiny Linux image, maybe Scratch if we're able to, health checks built in for you. So FaaS up will build your code by combining that handler and the Python template together. You'll then get a Docker image, and it gets pushed to a registry. So when you do FaaS CLI deploy or an up, you're just really deploying from a registry. And we all know how to build and manage containers, so this is something that works very well with you instead of against you. Now, when you've got a couple of functions, you actually need some way of managing that. And so we've come up with this lightweight YAML file. The top one is just 3-4 lines to define a function, but the bottom one also has a secret in it. Now, that same amount of text in Kubernetes is 300 lines. What would you rather maintain 100 of? Right? I think I know the answer. Now, Patricio, there's a HTTP proxy here. Do you have to use a proxy for anything?
We use proxy for everything that needs to access to the internet, but not only HTTP proxy. We had 2 Docker proxies, Docker registry on our infrastructure, one for our own image and other for cage, for proxy cage.
So proxies are hard enough. I don't know if anybody's having to use one at your enterprise company. I had to for a number of years, and the last thing you want is for them to get in your way. So let's get a quick demo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a directory on the computer, and I'm going to go FaaS CLI new. We'll put language Go, the name of the function, and because this is going to go on the Docker Hub, I'm just putting the prefix of the function there, my username. This has generated the code and the YAML file that we talked about. So now what we'll see is our folder. Hang on, we're probably better making a new folder for this. Okay. We have the YAML file. It says what the language is. It says where it's going to be deployed. But really what we want to see is the handler. And it doesn't really get any simpler than that. From here, we can now do FaaS CLI up. And in a number of moments, we'll see that the image was built by Docker locally, has been pushed up to the internet, and will be deployed in the cluster. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that in production, but for development, this is a very easy workflow. In production, your CI/CD server would do this, and we've got some other options for you too. Now, where you see this is in the UI of OpenFaaS. On the left-hand side, we've got the functions in the cluster. There's our function, and it's been pulled. We can invoke it. Now, one of the other parts of OpenFaaS's UI is this function store. And from here, we can get any number of predefined functions out of the community store, deploy them, and start getting shared value from that. So what I want to do is show you what Patricio put together. And I'm going to do FaaS CLI store list using the command line. You can see all of these different ones from the community version, but actually you can add your own store. And this is what we've done. So now what I want to do is I want to deploy something that looks a lot like what Patricio would build at work. We're going to do a loan calculator, and then a web page, a form that we can go to see it and access it. So basically, we're doing a projection. We're typing an amount. How much do we want to do, Patricio?
120.
120K. Wow. Hope you can make the repayments.
Think big.
I'm going to give you 15% because I don't know about this one. And so live, that just ran a function to serve it and a function to do the projection. And as we just change the months, we can see that live being translated and bringing the data back. So what we saw was we created a new function very, very quickly. We got it up and running on our cluster in Kubernetes, a custom function store using stuff that makes sense for our business. Now, OpenFaaS has a very Kubernetes native experience. We looked at this earlier, but what I want you to focus on is on the right-hand side, the OpenFaaS operator. This works through a custom resource definition called a function. Now, you define in a similar way that YAML that you saw, and then that function gets deployed as an entry, and our operator will create the pods that are needed. The top one has 2, which means it probably needed to scale up because of traffic. Okay. Now, I'll make these slides available for you, and you can get these online if you want to dig in a bit more. Another thing that not a lot of people realize about OpenFaaS is that it supports a multitude of different events. For instance, one of the most popular we find is Kafka. The way this works is we set up a Kafka connector. There's an SDK you can use to write more of these integrations. And then on your function, you say what topic it cares about as an annotation. When we receive traffic, it links the two together and invokes it via that gateway. So we've got that same scaling and unified experience for anything that you do. Now, we'll just touch briefly on your architecture and what you've put together, if you can tell us how that works.
Yeah, well, at the left side, on the right side, you can see our existing infrastructure. We have a lot of legacy products, legacy projects that we need to keep it working. And in the middle, we have the Kubernetes and OpenFaaS segment. We start deploying functions. We are deconstructing our monolithic architecture, and we are going straight from monolithic to function. We are skipping the microservice step, the microservice layer. And one thing I want to quickly remark here is that we are interacting with a lot of languages, a lot of procedures. What we now already have running, like PHP homepage or many procedures, many projects written in Java with a tool called GNexus. But even we have RPG procedures on our EVMI series that we consume from our functions. And we are using a lot of the ecosystem, the cloud native ecosystem like Prometheus, not only for OpenFaaS autoscaling, but we are monitoring, we were using Prometheus for monitoring our own infrastructure. We are using Grafana for visibility, but also we are firing alerts to some bots so we can know that certain functions are going to collide cores, kind of like that. We are using Fluent as our logging aggregator. We are using Minio for our object storage. And that's it.
Okay, so thanks for that. And I think if you want to know more about this particular architecture, come and ask us at the end. We're running a little bit tight on time now. So these are some of our top end users, some of the biggest ones, the ones that are allowed to say that they use this. What was it like actually going to your boss and saying, can we get listed on this open source project?
Yeah, this was very easy.
Really? That's not what you said earlier in practice.
Well, yeah, I know.
Did you have any questions?
Yeah, we had a lot of questions, indeed. Who are using it? Who supports that? And things like that. Our environment is very, very conservative, and they don't want to adopt some more novedoso.
And I think you said that basically it was the confidence that you had from the community and understanding the system.
And we gained the permission to adopt all of this because we found the community was very supporting for us.
Thank you. So there are some new projects in sight. Can you tell us a bit about what you're looking to do next?
Yeah, as one of our most interesting project right now we have in course is a project when you can deposit your check, just taking a picture of it, and all that will be handled by OpenFaaS functions. We also have a lot of credit scoring models, machine learning models that we are moving to OpenFaaS. And we also are trying to find a way to move our GNexus code-generated procedures and projects to become them functions
and
for
that's something
OpenFaaS.
that's very popular in Latin America for code generation. And we've just got a couple of minutes left. I want to tell you about one more thing before we finish recording, and then we'll take some questions afterwards. So we've started doing something by listening to the users and seeing where are the pain points, what do you actually want on top of OpenFaaS. And it turns out people want a managed experience that is multi-user, gives you a personalized dashboard, and has CI/CD built in. Now we've done that through something that you might have heard called GitOps, and you get your feedback through GitHub. So as soon as you do a push to a private or public GitHub or GitLab repo, we'll take the event, process it, build and package your function, deploy it in your cluster, and give you feedback. You then get a nice personalized dashboard that looks like this, and you can get additional data like what Patricio likes, the statistics, find out is it breaking. And so really, to wrap up, because we could probably talk all night about this, our mission in OpenFaaS community is to make serverless functions simple. That's the core of the message. We want to be leading in open source serverless like we have been doing for the last 12 months. I mean, we have almost 16,000 GitHub stars. And it's really important for us to provide the best FaaS experience possible while not overloading you with technology. OpenFaaS Cloud is going to allow us to enable teams and solve problems as people adopt this in the enterprise, and they don't want to custom craft their own solution, but they want the convenience of having something that's ready and that supports them. Now, one thing that I think is particularly interesting, as we saw this in the keynote with Kelsey, is the migration paths. So we want to make it really easy for you to get from Lambda to OpenFaaS or the other way around. We heard recently that the founder of Kubeless has moved on to other things, and that project may be put into maintenance mode. So again, we want to help the whole community by giving them an easy way to migrate onto OpenFaaS and other platforms. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the talk. We'll be here at the end, and we've just got one more thing for you, which is 3 ways that you can get involved. So if you want to take a photo of this, I'll leave it up. You can get connected on Slack. Patricio is there. He's one of the most active members. Thank you for that. You can learn with 12 practical labs how to build functions and see if this is for you. And the last thing you could do is perhaps if you're getting into the hype and you want to push things a bit further, you can make use of Istio with OpenFaaS and walk through the labs that we've built there. Okay?
Questions?
So I think we're out of our time now, but if anybody has questions, you can come up to the front, and I think we'll take them off mic. Yeah? Okay, great.